Hi, I'm Possessed Pixie and welcome to the very first video on my channel. So I do want to tell you that this was not the original idea for the video. I wanted it to be me doing my makeup with you, but I lost the footage. And today is really the only day I can film this week because I need to edit and go to work and all these things. So it's just gonna kind of be me talking to you, talking at you, telling you about some folklore. My goal with this channel is a little all over the place, but one thing I do know that I really want to do is these little folklore Fridays or something along those lines where I am just really interested in folklore, and I've been in school for so long. I just graduated my master's program, and all that really took up a lot of my free time, and I haven't been able to look into things that I'd really wanted to learn and know. And now I'm choosing to do that with my time, and I want to share that with you. And I'm just really interested in folklore and cryptids and creatures and magic and all these kinds of things. And I'm sure this channel will be so many more things than just that. And I love doing my makeup, and I wanted that to be a part of it, and maybe it will, but yeah, for this first video, we're just kind of hanging out together and figuring it out. So, in the realm of folklore, today we are going to be talking about the Fae, or Fae folk, or Fairies. Again, I'm Possessed Pixie, and let's get into it. Like I said, we're talking about the Fae, kind of as a little homage to the name I picked for this channel. And yeah, I've also just as a kid always been really interested in fairies and the Fae, and I've always wanted to know more, and I spent a good amount of time trying to figure that out. So let's start with the origins of the Fae, which the origins are really ultimately diverse, and I think that's because there's just so many cultures that have so many different names for the Fae. The specifics are really believed to come from the Celtic, Germanic, and Gaelic regions. And that's really where the Fae's roots are tied. Before we really get into what the Fae are, and since we just are talking about origins, I want to talk about some notable accounts throughout history and literature, art, where the Fae have been mentioned. So some believe that the very first mention of the Fae comes from the Iliad, where Homer mentions these watery fairies dancing in circles, and this is from about 700 BC. And because of the time frame and general beliefs of that era, these fairies are most likely more related to the idea of worshiping primordial deities. Around the same time, the belief of nymphs came into light, and these nymphs were the children of Mother Nature, and that they are the personifications of various natural elements portrayed as these beautiful maidens who are very fond of music and fun. One of the very first illustrations of fairies, specifically when they are a little bit smaller and given wings, was in the 18th century. Another major mention of the Fae comes from Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. He depicted Fae, the fairies, Fae folk, as, or from a more romantic lens, and they're really seen as these magical beings that are benevolent, but also are a little mischievous. And finally, in the Victorian era is where the depictions of the Fae truly start to shift, and that's due to children's literature. Illustrations for fairy tales of fairies became smaller and cuter. Even though they were smaller and cuter, the stories and tales still reflected the kind of fear and a little bit of fun that was so relevant in the spoken traditions of folklore. There are a couple different reasons of why there is so much knowledge and folklore about the Fae, and one of those reasons is that through the spoken tradition and through the sharing of folklore, there has been an attempt to make sense of both the unknown and the known, and this is where a figure kind of takes form to, I guess, ease the human mind of both fear and familiarity. The other reason is that the Fae folk actually do exist, and over time people have been able to explore and understand the Fae folk in an attempt to please them. And pleasing them is really rather important, or not offending them, because they are easy to offend. Just with all that in mind, as we proceed, we will continue talking about the Fae with a sense of politeness and cautiousness and care, as I hope and want to believe, personally. Who doesn't love a little magic? Okay, into the I move a lot. So into really the fun stuff and the getting to know the Fae folk as a whole. So starting off, who are the Fae? Today, we often see fairies portrayed as these beautiful winged pixies that are just fluttering around and enjoying their nature and having fun, playing music, just doing their thing. And even really that's due to Hollywood and recent fantasy fiction painting this picture that the Fae at worst can be deceitful and narrow-minded. But these depictions of fairies usually offer blessings and are spiritually related to nature and really hold a sense of place in their environment. But really, the true nature of the Fae is a lot more complex, and not all Fae are cute, beautiful pixies. In fact, they can be really dark and difficult and hard to deal with. There are two classifications of the Fae, and that is really to talk about that malevolence and also that benevolence. And these classifications come from mainly Scottish and Northern English folklore, the Celtic roots, and the two ways to describe them are the Seelie courts and the Unseelie courts. And the folklore of the Fae were given these classifications because it is not easy to simply define the Fae folk as good or bad, and they are like a divine paradox of these things. They're complex creatures, aren't we all? So the Seelie courts refer to fairies that are mostly good or benevolent. The word Seelie means happy or lucky, and it's actually the word that our word silly is derived from. So to me, that's kind of cute. Like, if somebody's calling you silly, they're just kind of calling you a little fun, good little fairy. Mostly good little fairy. And the unseelie courts refer to fairies that are mostly malevolent or untrustworthy. And again, even with these classifications, we are really led back to the idea of that divine paradox, and like even Seelie referring to mostly good, they were still fae that were considered dangerous to humans, which is so interesting. Like, because Seelie and being considered dangerous, some fae are really known to help you out. Even now that we know the classifications, what are the fae? And oh man, let me tell you, there are so many theories, and they're put forth over so many centuries and through so many cultures that there's dozens. There's so many. But we're gonna just go over a couple, and one of those theories, and to me this one actually falls under more of the Christian belief system in a way, but this theory believes that the Fae are fallen angels, that they are spirits stuck between heaven and hell, so a little bit of a purgatory situation. Some also say that the Fae are souls of unbaptized babies who were not good enough to ascend, but not bad enough to burn for eternity. Which, that part to me is really interesting. But maybe that's just on my own belief of a baby being innocent and not really being able to be defined as good or bad, but inherently innocent. But yeah, that I just really stuck on that. Babies. Unbaptized babies. Another theory, this is a little bit separate of the idea that Fae actually do exist, but a theory is quite literally that they are like a physical being that of similar to humans. They are just essentially a race of smaller human beings that have evolved to fit into their habitat. What is their habitat? I'm not super sure. I would love to evolve to be able to fit into a tree hole. Are you joking me? Anyway, to support this theory, actually, in 2003, archaeologists found a race of dwarf-sized human beings that they named, I'm just gonna put it right here because I still can't figure out how to say it, which were also called hobbits for short. A female skeleton that they found stood a little bit under a meter tall, and her skull was the size of a grapefruit. So a meter is only about 3 feet in full, so it was smaller than 3 feet. And I don't have a grapefruit, but I think grapefruit's like that big. Could it have been a child? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it was believed to be. It was believed to be an adult female skeleton. But based on the skeleton that was found, these hobbits were supposedly alive only about 18,000 years ago, which sounds like a long time, but we were also just talking about the Iliad. So, continuing the theories on what are the Fae, there's the more general belief that the Fae folk are just spiritual in nature, that they are these liminal creatures and they can choose to manifest in the physical being, but they are also ethereal in form, and that they can shapeshift and choose how they want to be presented. And one of the last theories that we're going to talk about is that The Fae folk fall under the realm of the elemental, which is a type of guardian spirit. Elementals are said to be spirits of the actual consciousness of the land, such as trees, rivers, mountains, all of that kind of stuff. The benevolent and the malevolent. I want to define that for you really quickly. So benevolent usually means well-meaning and kind, and malevolent usually refers to maliciousness or evil, a kind of desire to harm. All of the Fae folk really do truly fall under both benevolent and malevolent. The Fae folk, no matter the class, no matter the type, which we'll get into types, love playing tricks on humans. It's just one of their character traits. Who doesn't love to be a little mischievous? But they do, and they will. Even the most helpful type of Fae will turn capricious or malevolent towards humans if angered or offended. And to all the Fae, I am not here to offend you. I am here to learn about you and teach others about you. Keep that in mind. The Fae will choose to play nasty tricks on those who do offend them or anger them. And even the cute little pixies, they will be helpful to deserving individuals, or deserving really to their definition. But they are just also known to pinch, poke, pull hair, and kick lazy humans, or really anyone they feel like it. Then there is, and this is where like the unseelie courts truly come into place, and that is in the poltergeist or demon Fae, and they are believed to be strictly malevolent, malicious, and untrustworthy. But there's just so much crossover between the Fae types and categories that they all can be malicious or malevolent, regardless if they can be helpful. But the poltergeist or demon usually are never helpful. Talk about some specific types or names of Fae folk that you either may know or may not know. And all over the world, every culture has its own version of Fae. Like, there are literally hundreds of names worldwide, but they all generally refer to the same thing and those same classifications. Starting off, you may or may not know of this one, but they are called brownies. Brownies are solitary fairies in Scottish folklore, and they choose to typically attach to a family and not a home. They may move with the family, but they move in to aid the woman of the house in her chores and daily activities. The brownies are small, wizened men with hair all over their bodies, hence their name. They are also shapeshifters, and if a farm is around, they usually take on the form of a rooster. Brownies are typically found in old manors and homes in Scotland, but some believe that they traveled to the New World with Scottish immigrants. Brownies really love helping deserving families, and again, deserving being a relatively loose term in knowing what the Fae define as such. The brownies, despise laziness. The brownies do not like receiving clothing. It will anger them, and he might just simply up and leave the family, and he will be very angered by being given spoiled milk. And milk will come back into play when we talk about well-mannered decisions, offerings, and protection. The next type of fae you may not even have known was a fae, but they are the banshees. And yes, banshees are considered to be fae, even though they're usually generally mistaken for spirits or ghosts, but she is a type of fairy, and she's originally from Ireland and the British Isles, but she's truly seen all over the world where any type of Celtic people dwell, and this includes continental Europe, and this also includes the United States. I feel like we could do a whole video on the banshee herself, and maybe we will, because I didn't even know she was considered a type of fae, and that was really interesting to learn. But as you may know, the banshee is said to wail or scream upon the death of a beloved family member, and she's typically attached to the oldest of Irish families and will warn them of their impending doom. Next is the most commonly known fae type, and that is the pixie. They are generally the most famously known fairy in the world, and similar to their depictions, they are small, winged-like human creatures whose heads are a little larger than their bodies, and they are attracted to nature. So beautiful flowers, fields and gardens, and they can be mischievous, but also helpful. And that really depends on the person that encounters them. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but pixies are the type known to kick, pull hair, pinch, poke, and just play silly little tricks when they're feeling particularly capricious. But hence their helpfulness and their mostly benevolent nature, they have also been known to take pity on a deserving person and will aid them in their time of need. Should you feel as though you need to ward off a pixie, it is best to use iron. But if a pixie is exposed to iron for a long period of time, it can kill them. The next type of fae folk are elves. Elves are faes from Norse and Germanic mythology or folklore, and have also been considered gods or demigods. Elves are known to be in our world as tall, graceful, beautiful beings with pointy ears and long, beautiful hair. The belief of elves in Northern European countries was so strong for so long that some people actually believed that they could kidnap children and murder full-grown adults. The legends and folklore of elves range from very beneficial to downright homicidal, which is true for most of the fae anyway. But it was really, I didn't know people really feared elves that much. And that's probably just because of popular culture. And lastly, I want to talk about if we reach beyond the Celtic and Gaelic regions, and really depending on how wide and how far we explore and research how do I want to say this? We will find that spirits are often very similar to fae by means of comparing the two, but usually they are disregarded as fae due to the origins of what we know the fae to be. And the more open we are to the idea of spirits as fae, we can find such to really be way more related. And for example, the Native American water fairies of the Micmac legend and really ends up relating to the idea of fairies as spirit guides. I think that was a little confusing and came out not the most coherent or eloquent. So I hope it made sense. Now let's talk about, should you choose to welcome the Fae into your life, into your space? I'm real tired of the bus. Now let's talk about how to welcome the Fae. Should you choose to want to invite them into your life, into your space, and ways to protect and ward should you need it. A general rule of thumb when dealing with the Fae folk is to be polite. All of the Fae folk have their likes and dislikes, and depending on the Fae that you are interacting with, these likes and dislikes can vary greatly. Should you switch between types and interacting with different Fae folk, it is generally best to assume, or to not assume, that just because one fairy likes it means another one will. We don't want to assume. An offering you can make to a fairy, a fae, whether that be in your garden or out in nature, includes fairy homes, and you can also create fairy gardens. Flower garden fae folk, relative of pixies and more, are said to be the easiest and most beneficial fae to work with and invite. The best way to attract them is by building and maintaining a garden full of native flowers and plants to the area you are in, and making it a beautiful safe haven for pollinators. If there are pollinators, there will be Fae. If you choose to set up a specific space for the Fae in your garden, you are choosing to welcome them into your space. This is where making a fairy house, ideally out of natural materials from your area, is recommended, and that is their designated area. Other offerings you can make to the Fae, if you are choosing to invite them and please them, you can offer honey, milk, fruit, cakes, and ale. They love a sweet. Love it a lot, so it's said. When making an offering to the Fae, it is super important to be very clear about a lot of things. You should declare your offering to them and say something along the lines of, if any of the good folk wish to have some of this, insert offering here, it shall be yours. After a few offerings that have been accepted, the Fae can be invited in, but it is super important to set clear boundaries politely. Meaning, if you don't want them in your home or along those lines, you set your boundaries very politely with the Fae. Fae really truly appreciate manners, but really despise rudeness and can become easily offended. Should you choose that you want to ward off the Fae, it has been long known, and as I mentioned before, that iron is a great warding material. With pixies, it can kill them with overexposure. If you are choosing to protect your home with iron, you can place an iron horseshoe prongs up above your door, and that should protect everyone inside, including your pets, In Russia, actually, instead of a horseshoe, they hang scythes. They hang scythes over the door. Another way to ward off the Fae is with large, deep-toned bells. This is best for warding off malevolent Fae, whether that be before a ritual or just to clear the home of their ill effects. And it's mostly because bells have been thought to scare the Fae due to the association of them with the church. A great way to ward off the Fae folk, if you need to, is with certain herbs. And the specific way to do this is to carry them on the person or into the home with set intentions. So just taking in an herb on a normal day is not going to do it, but setting your intentions with the herb and doing that as a ritual can help. Some of these herbs include garlic, rue, heather, rosemary, clove, blackberry, bay, pepper, and sandalwood. Salt, tried and true, is another great deterrent and protection herb. You can put a circle of salt around the home, sprinkle it in the doors, on the windowsills. Salt is such a great protecting herb, mineral, protecting you from evil and just protecting your space and your intentions. And salt, if anything, salt. Just some other little notes is the Fae love a fire. They love a cozy fire to dance around, but they hate excessive smoke. So if you are lucky enough to have a fireplace but are dealing with some pesky little Fae, in your situation, not saying Fae are pesky, then a good smoke cleansing can help clear them out. Now, similar to the well-mannered and polite decisions you can make to invite the Fae, let's talk a little bit about how you can tell if the Fae are near and where to find them. So, if the Fae are near, it is said that you may hear far off music, typically that of the harp or flute type tend to be the most common. You may notice things are missing or out of place. They have a specific or a particular liking to shiny objects like jewelry, crystals, and other little trinkets. And then lastly, you can tell if they're near is if the offerings you set out for them are gone. Gone being if you put out a little bit of honey in a little tiny dish, the dish is licked clean, milk is gone. If you left them a shiny object that's taken, you get the point. Now, where can you find the Fae? Most commonly known, I believe, are fairy circles or fairy rings, and those are the light or dark colored circles in grass, or even the circle of mushrooms or a small circle of stones. If you find one of these, it is said to never stop in the middle of a fairy ring, or you'll be whisked away into the fairy realm forever. Could be good, could be bad. Fairy realm, otherworld. We'll talk about that a little bit. Then there's also a fairy trail. I had never heard of the fairy trails, but this is typically for trooping, walking fae folk, and it's like a fairy ring, but it's just a long trail of dark grass. Adane McCoy, she's a witch and an author of A Witch's Guide to Fairy Folk, says that these fairy trails are the roads that fairies take to travel from one place to the next. I don't think I've ever seen a fairy trail. I would like to. I've definitely seen fairy circles, fairy rings. I've seen mushroom ones. I have not seen a stone one. Those are said to really be away from people and more likely found in nature. In Ireland, another place to find the Fae folk are fairy mounds. And these are essentially just ruins of old medieval forts, but can also be hills or ancient burial grounds. And oh my goodness, these ancient burial grounds kind of relate back to the Fae as a spirit, or the Fae being related to spirits. I think talking about them has started to welcome them, which is okay. I plan to leave a respectful offering and do my thing. But so for centuries, at least since the late medieval age, people have believed these mounds and these hills have been dwellings of the Fae folk, and many sightings tell of fairies entering and emerging from fairy mounds. These mounds are said to be doors or portals to the fairy realm, and Irish folklore says to never disturb a fairy port, even or to fairy mound, and even cutting trees or bushes that surround the fairy mound may warrant the individual's untimely death. To talk about the fairy realm or the Celtic otherworld, this refers to Fae folklore having Celtic origins, and in Celtic mythology, there's another place parallel to our world, and that's called the Otherworld. The Fae folk are often featured in myths about the Otherworld. It is said to be a beautiful place and also a terrifying place. The Otherworld, or the fairy realm, is filled with wonders and healing trees and fairies, but it can also be very dangerous and a horrible place filled with monsters. You can also find the Fae folk in the home, and that's really relative to the solitary type of Fae, such as brownies, and they like to cozy up in people's homes and are generally benevolent unless angered, but they like to cozy up, they like to be friends. Now, to start wrapping up our little talk on the Fae, it is believed that you simply cannot see the Fae folk with your eyes, but you must see them through the heart. And I really believe that that is so important to spirituality and your connection and your beliefs and how you choose to live your life with potential magic and whimsy and all that. I really like that little quote. I think it's really cute. That's really all I have right now to share about the folklore of the Fae. And this is just what I found in my research and kind of simplified to be able to share it with you. And I'm sure, and I know, there's just so much more folklore, especially across various cultures all over the world. So please, please, please feel free to comment anything you may know about your folklore of fairies, as I would love to continue to learn. This was super fun to do, and I look forward to doing a lot more folky videos with you all. And I don't really know how much else I have to say. I'm gonna start researching for the next video. And again, thank you for bearing with me on my first video. I really appreciate it, and thank you for watching. If my layout of talking about the Fae and folklore in general isn't quite cohesive, and this one didn't make a ton of sense as I moved through my sections, please let me know. I'm very open to constructive criticism and feedback, and I just want this to be a fun experience for all of us, and I really can't wait. Some other things I might do with this channel is play spooky games. I am a big horror fan, and I've been really getting into gaming recently, so I might do streams or not. I don't know. I haven't decided. But I also think I would like to do some vlogging, some little bio vlogs of doing creepy, weird stuff and bringing you along with me. And if all that sounds good, I would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe. And all of this is so heartfelt, and I don't even know what else to say. I know I'm gonna get better as we go. And I can't wait. I can't wait for the growth. I can't wait for the growth. And yes, I was originally gonna be doing my makeup during this video, but it didn't work out that way. So maybe that'll come back in the future. Or maybe not. Multitasking is hard. When I started trying to do this, I'm like looking at you, looking at my notes, looking at my mirror. Try not to lean in too close. But yes, I look off to the side because I've got a little presentation I made for myself. And trying to not forget everything while I'm talking to a camera is hard. Okay, I'm done rambling. Again, I appreciate you for watching. Thank you. And I'll see y'all later. Bye.